So, Marcus, what exactly is it that you do? Victoria Ashford asked the question like she was handling something dirty, her manicured fingers wrapped around a crystal wine glass that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Her eyes traveled slowly down my faded flannel shirt, my worn jeans, my boots that had seen better days about 3 years ago. I smiled politely. I work in technology. Technology. She repeated the word like I'd said I worked in garbage collection. How modern. Across the table her husband Richard, a man whose silver cufflinks alone could have paid my rent for 6 months if I actually needed to worry about rent, exchanged a look with his son Bradley that wasn't subtle in the slightest. The look said everything: disappointment, confusion, and a heavy dose of, what is my son doing with this person? And sitting next to me, my boyfriend of 2 years, Tyler Ashford, heir to the Ashford real estate empire, stared at his soup like it contained the secrets of the universe. His hand found mine under the table and squeezed, but he said nothing. Welcome to the most uncomfortable dinner of my life. Or at least, that's what they thought it was going to be. Let me back up and explain how I ended up at this 18-person mahogany dining table in a mansion that had its own name. Seriously, it was called Ashford Heights, wearing clothes that I'd specifically chosen to look as unimpressive as possible. Tyler and I had met 2 years ago at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. Not a trendy coffee shop, not some artisanal pour-over establishment, just a regular corner place where the coffee was strong and cheap and nobody cared what you were wearing. He'd been there hiding from his family obligations, wearing a hoodie and looking stressed. I'd been there because I liked the coffee. We'd started talking about nothing in particular, then about everything. He didn't know who I was. I didn't know who he was. And for a while, that was perfect. By the time we figured out each other's backgrounds, me a tech entrepreneur who'd sold my first company at 24 and my second at 28, him the reluctant heir to a family whose name was on buildings across Manhattan, we were already too deep to care. But Tyler's family didn't know about me. Not really. He'd mentioned he was dating someone, but he'd been vague about the details, and they'd been too busy with their charity galas and board meetings to press. This dinner was supposed to be the big introduction. Just be yourself, Tyler had said that morning, nervously straightening his tie. That's the plan, I'd replied. What I hadn't told him was exactly how I planned to be myself. See, Tyler had warned me about his family, the judgment, the obsession with status, the way they evaluated everyone based on net worth and social standing. He'd warned me that they would probably be cold, probably be dismissive, probably try to make me feel small. And I decided to give them exactly what they expected. The old flannel shirt was actually comfortable. I wore clothes like this most days when I was in meetings. The worn jeans were genuine favorites. The boots had sentimental value. I'd bought them with my first real paycheck from my first real job, before any of the success, before any of the money. I wasn't pretending to be someone I wasn't. I was just choosing not to perform wealth for people who would only respect me if I did. Call it a test. Call it petty. Call it whatever you want. I called it interesting. The first course was some kind of chilled cucumber soup with edible flowers. Richard Ashford sat at the head of the table like a king surveying his domain, occasionally glancing my way with an expression that suggested he found something unpleasant on the bottom of his Italian leather shoe. So, Marcus, he said, drawing out my name, Tyler tells us you're in technology. Startup world, is it? Something like that. Ah. He nodded sagely, as if I'd confirmed his worst suspicions. Very volatile industry. High failure rate, I understand. 9 out of 10 startups fail, isn't that the statistic? It's a challenging field, I agreed. Tyler's sister, Isabel, leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was everything her parents had raised her to be: polished, beautiful, and utterly ruthless in that Upper East Side way. And where do you live, Marcus? Tyler's been so secretive about everything. Brooklyn, I said. Williamsburg area. Brooklyn. Victoria said the word like it was a communicable disease. How bohemian. I suppose the rents there are more manageable. Mom, Tyler started, but I squeezed his hand under the table. It's fine, I said easily. Yes, the rent is manageable. I don't believe in spending money just to impress people. The silence that followed was delicious. I watched Richard's eye twitch almost imperceptibly and Victoria take a very long sip of her wine. The main course was filet mignon with truffle butter, accompanied by a steady stream of questions that were really just insults dressed up in expensive clothing. Richard wanted to know about my 5-year plan and whether I had any real career prospects beyond the startup fantasy. Victoria inquired, with poisonous sweetness, whether my parents had been able to provide any advantages or if I was self-made in the truest sense, meaning, she assumed, that I came from nothing and would return to nothing. Bradley, Tyler's older brother, was the worst. He'd been drinking steadily since the appetizers, and his filter had worn thin. I just don't understand, he said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, why anyone would dress like that to meet their boyfriend's family. I mean, it's basic respect, isn't it? Unless you just don't have anything better. Bradley, Tyler said sharply, and I could feel the tension radiating off him. What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Bradley gestured at me with his steak knife. No offense, Marcus, but this whole struggling artist thing might work in Brooklyn, but here? We can see right through it. Can you? I asked mildly. Obviously. You're dating Tyler for a reason, right? I mean, what else could it be? The implication hung in the air like smoke. Gold digger. Social climber. Fortune hunter. Everything they assumed I was, wrapped up in one sneering question. Tyler stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. That's enough. Bradley, you're drunk, and you're being an ass. Mom, Dad, I expected better from you. Marcus is, Tyler. I put a hand on his arm, gently pulling him back down. It's okay. It's not okay. They're treating you like. I know. I smiled at him, then at the rest of the table. But I think I understand where they're coming from. They're protecting you. In their own way. They look at me and see a risk. I respect that. Victoria actually looked slightly uncomfortable. Richard shifted in his seat. Even Bradley seemed thrown off by my calm response. I'm not offended, I continued. Really? You don't know me. You're making assumptions based on how I look, what I wear, where I live. That's human nature. We all do it. That's very mature of you, Victoria said carefully. I try. The conversation moved on, but I could feel them watching me differently now. Not with more respect, not yet, but with curiosity. Like I wasn't playing the role they'd expected, and they weren't quite sure what to do about it. Dessert was creme brulee with fresh berries, and that's when Richard decided to go in for the kill. I saw in the news today that tech company, what was it called, the one that sold for all those billions, anyway, they said the founders all became instant billionaires. Can you imagine? He laughed. All these young kids with more money than sense. NextGen, Isabel supplied. The AI company. They sold to Microsoft for something ridiculous. That's the one. Richard shook his head. I just don't understand it. What do these people actually create? It's all abstract, isn't it? Not like real estate. Not like tangible assets. Software can be quite tangible, I said. In terms of impact, anyway. Oh, I'm sure you'd say that. Bradley snorted. Let me guess, you've got some app idea that's going to make you millions? Everyone in Brooklyn has an app idea. I've had a few. Right. He rolled his eyes. And how's that working out for you? What's your net worth, Marcus? Since we're being honest here. Bradley. Tyler was on his feet again. But Richard held up a hand. No, let's hear it. If Marcus is so comfortable with who he is, surely he won't mind a little transparency. After all, if he is going to be part of this family, and that seems to be where this is heading, we should know what we're dealing with. That's completely inappropriate, Tyler said, his voice shaking with anger. You don't get to, actually, I interrupted, I don't mind. Everyone stared at me. You want to see my financials? I shrugged. Sure. Why not? Let's clear the air. Victoria looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. That's really not necessary, no, I insist. I pulled out my phone. Bradley's right. If I'm going to be part of this family, you should know what you're dealing with. Full transparency. Tyler grabbed my arm. Marcus, you don't have to do this. You don't have to prove anything to them. I know I don't have to, I said quietly, meeting his eyes. But I want to. I opened my banking app and typed in my password. The family watched in silence, Richard with smug anticipation, Victoria with thinly veiled disgust, Bradley with the glee of someone who thinks they're about to witness a public humiliation. Here we go. I turned my phone around and set it on the table. The screen showed my primary account balance, $47,328,612.14. The silence lasted for exactly 7 seconds. I counted. Then Bradley laughed, a short, sharp bark. Very funny. What is this, some kind of Photoshop joke? Scroll down, I suggested. You'll see the transaction history. Last week I moved some funds from my investment portfolio. The week before that, quarterly dividend payments from my holdings. Oh, and there's a deposit from last month, that was a consulting fee. Small project, only $800,000, but it kept me busy. Bradley's face went slack. He reached for the phone, then pulled back like it might bite him. Victoria made a sound I can only describe as a refined squawk. That can't be. Richard, to his credit, said nothing. He just stared at the screen, his face cycling through approximately 17 different expressions in rapid succession. I sold my first company when I was 24, I said conversationally. A cybersecurity firm. Small exit, only 12 million, but it was enough to fund my second venture. That one went better. Sold it 3 years ago for 340 million. I kept about 190 after taxes and reinvested most of it. I paused. I'm sorry, should I have led with that? Tyler was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You never told me it was that much. You never asked. I smiled at him. You never seemed to care. I don't care. I know. That's why I love you. Across the table, Isabel had picked up my phone and was scrolling through the account with shaking hands. This is real, she whispered. Oh my God, this is real. Quite real, I confirmed. I could also show you my investment accounts if you'd like. Or the property holdings. I own a building in Manhattan, actually. Nothing fancy, just a small apartment complex. Oh, and there's the house in the Hamptons, but I barely use it. Too stuffy. I prefer Brooklyn. Victoria's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. What followed was the most satisfying 15 minutes of my entire life. Richard attempted to recover first, his business instincts kicking in. Well, Marcus, I have to say, this is quite the surprise. You know, if you're looking for investment opportunities in real estate, the Ashford Group has several projects. I'm aware of your projects, I said pleasantly. I reviewed your portfolio before tonight. Solid fundamentals, but your commercial holdings are overexposed to retail, which is risky in the current market. You might want to diversify into industrial properties. Just a thought. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Victoria was on her hands and knees picking up broken glass, the first time she'd probably done manual labor in 40 years, while a servant hurried over to help. Marcus, dear, I feel like we may have gotten off on the wrong foot, do you? I took a bite of my creme brulee. I wonder why that might be. Bradley had gone completely silent. His face was the color of old paper, and he was gripping the edge of the table like he thought he might fall off the earth. The thing is, I said, looking around at each of them in turn, I wore these clothes on purpose. I wanted to see how you'd treat someone you thought had nothing. Not because I was trying to trap you, but because Tyler told me who you were, and I didn't want to believe him. Tyler's hand found mine again, and this time his grip was fierce. He told me you'd judge me by my appearance. He told me you'd make assumptions about my worth as a person based on my net worth in the bank. He told me that you'd never accept someone you thought was beneath you. I paused. I hoped he was wrong. Victoria's eyes were wet. We didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every snide comment, every condescending question, every implication that I was only with Tyler for his money. You looked at my clothes and decided who I was. I shrugged. The irony is that I have more liquid assets than this entire family combined. But that shouldn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered to any decent person. You're right. Richard's voice was quiet. You're absolutely right. I blinked. That wasn't the response I'd expected. I've spent my entire career evaluating people based on what they have, he continued. It's how I was raised. It's how I raised my children. He glanced at Tyler. But Tyler never fit that mold. He always saw people differently. And tonight, watching how we treated you, watching how wrong we were, I'm starting to understand why he's been pulling away from this family. Dad, Tyler started. Let me finish. Richard stood up and walked around the table to where I was sitting. Then, to my complete shock, he extended his hand. I owe you an apology, Marcus. Several apologies. And I owe my son an apology for putting him in this position. I stood and shook his hand. I appreciate that. I'm not saying I'll change overnight. Old habits, you know. He attempted a smile. But I'd like the chance to know you. The real you. Not the person I assumed you were. The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet for a long time. Tyler drove while I looked out the window at the city lights streaming past. You could have told me, he finally said. About the money. About all of it. Would it have changed anything? No. But I would have known to expect the look on Bradley's face. He started laughing, really laughing, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. Did you see him? I thought he was going to pass out. I thought your mother was going to pass out. Did you see the wine glass? She's going to need therapy. Bradley's going to need therapy. My dad. He trailed off. Your dad surprised me, I admitted. He surprised me too. That was the most honest I've heard him be in years. Tyler reached over and took my hand. Why did you really do it? The clothes, the test, all of it? I thought about it for a moment. Because I needed to know, I said finally. I needed to know if they could ever accept someone who wasn't like them. Not for my sake, I don't need their acceptance, but for yours. You love your family, Tyler. Even when they disappoint you, even when they're awful, you love them. And I needed to know if there was a chance they could be better. And, I think there might be. Not tomorrow, not next month, but eventually. Your father's apology was real. That's a start. And, Tyler was quiet for a moment. You know what I love most about you? My $47 million? He laughed. No. I love that you wore that old flannel shirt to a dinner where most people would have worn Armani. I love that you don't care about impressing anyone. I love that you judge people by who they are, not what they have, even when they don't deserve the same courtesy. Well, I said, I learned that from someone special. Yeah? Who? My grandmother. She raised me after my parents died. She had nothing, worked as a school cafeteria cook for 30 years. But she was the wisest person I've ever known. I smiled at the memory. She used to say, money can tell you how much someone has, but it can't tell you who someone is. Watch how people treat the waiter, not how much they tip. Smart woman. The smartest. I built my first company so I could take care of her. She passed before the second one sold, but she knew I'd be okay. That was enough for her. We drove in comfortable silence for a few more minutes. So what happens now? Tyler asked. Now we go home. Tomorrow, we have brunch with your family. Wait, what? Your mother texted me while you were getting the car. She wants to make amends. Suggested brunch at that place on Fifth Avenue. Tyler groaned. You don't have to. I know. But I want to. Give them a chance to know the real me. I grinned. Besides, I'm wearing the flannel shirt again. You're evil. I prefer dedicated to consistency. That brunch was the start of something unexpected. Victoria made an actual effort, asking about my work, my interests, my childhood. Richard discussed investment strategies without condescension. Even Bradley mumbled something that might have been an apology, though he couldn't quite meet my eyes. It wasn't perfect. These things never are. Years of ingrained assumptions don't disappear overnight. But there were moments, small ones, where I caught glimpses of the family Tyler had always hoped they could be. A month later, Richard called to ask my opinion on a deal he was considering. I told him it was overvalued. He listened. 2 months after that, Victoria invited me to a charity event, not as Tyler's plus one, but with a ticket in my own name. And Tyler? Tyler started speaking up more in family discussions. He stopped apologizing for who he was, for what he valued. He stopped shrinking to fit their expectations. That might have been the biggest change of all. Here's what I've learned about wealth, and about the people who worship it. Money reveals character, but not in the way most people think. It doesn't reveal the character of the person who has it, it reveals the character of everyone around them. Watch how people treat someone they think is poor. That's who they really are. The Ashfords treated me like I was worthless when they thought I had nothing. They scrambled to respect me when they learned I had millions. But here's the thing, I was the same person in the same flannel shirt. Nothing about me had changed. What changed was their perception. And perception, as they learned that night, can be dangerously wrong. I still wear that flannel shirt to family dinners sometimes. Not to make a point anymore, I think the point's been made, but because it's comfortable, and because it reminds me of who I am. Not the number in my bank account. Not the companies I've built. Just me. Tyler proposed last month. Small ceremony, close friends only, no press. His family will be there, all of them, even Bradley, who's slowly becoming a halfway decent person. And when people ask Tyler what he sees in me, he tells them the same thing every time. I fell in love with a guy in a coffee shop wearing a worn-out hoodie. I didn't know he had anything except good taste in coffee and a really terrible sense of humor. That was enough. That was always enough. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones that can't be measured. And sometimes, the best way to find out who someone really is to let them think you have nothing at all. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got more stories about hidden truths, unexpected reversals, and the moments that change everything. And if you've ever been underestimated because of how you looked, drop your story in the comments below. You never know who needs to hear it.